Welcome to Beside Ourselves, a podcast on AI adoption for business by the Beside Partners.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Beside Ourselves podcast. 12, 13, we're into double figures, and we're going to get to the point where we're going to stop counting. So I'm Giles, fractional CTO from Cambridge in the UK, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in crime,
Hello,
Theo.
everyone.
Hi, Theo.
Hello, I'm the partner in crime, the Robin to the Batman.
Exactly.
My name is Theo. Exactly, based in Germany. That's right. Hey, Giles.
Good. Great to see you. Sun's out. Summer's on its way. So we're here to talk about the world of AI again. So
For our sins.
for our sins. So topic this week, I thought we'd go a bit more practical, but basically talk about our own personal experiences, I think. So let's talk about how we use AI, and let's maybe focus on the tools we are using and the tools we're not using, and the platforms and tools we're using and not using, and how we're finding that improving our productivity and all that sort of stuff. I thought that might just be quite useful just to share that. I know we touch on it a bit as we go through, but maybe we come in from our own side. So I'll throw to you first, throw you in the bus. So let's start with the models, because obviously there's all the big models. So which ones are you finding you're using, and which ones maybe you're not using as much, or maybe not even using at all?
Yeah, I reckon I went through a journey that a lot of people did. So when ChatGPT first came into play, I think that was the first one that we all tried, the one that made headlines, the one that maybe we got the first subscriptions. But then very, very quickly, I grew out of it, and I haven't actually used ChatGPT for a while now. I think it became very evident that the focus of the application was on the retail market and all these things. So as professionals, we kind of moved on. And at the moment, I think that in terms of models, I think that I'm kind of going in between, half and half between Gemini, and that's because there is a lot of the applications with Google Workspace that I'm using, and also Claude, because again, Claude excels at the coding aspect. So I'm finding that works really well for me. And it's not just a matter of capabilities, of course, it's also a matter of style. I think that I've always found ChatGPT to be, that sycophantic element, that seems to be very prevalent there. Whereas with the other tools, the tone of voice, one, I can control it. And secondly, it's more me. It's kind of like it's a bit more what I'm used to seeing. How about you? I suspect it's not that different.
No, it's very similar. I think I would say my usage of ChatGPT is very limited, actually. I think everybody, signed up, tried it, as soon as, because it was obviously the one that really drove this. It was the release of ChatGPT that got everybody going, oh, so signed up, very quickly signed for a paid version. So, because at that time it was like, if you want the free version, you didn't know where your data was going. So sign up for a paid version. But I think I've very rapidly moved across to Claude. Like you, I just found it more, not so much me. I found the output, the quality of the output that I was getting from it much more useful, much more in keeping in terms of, or it was able to do what I wanted it to do. I found it a helpful tool, whereas ChatGPT was more of a kind of a plaything. You just kind of tried it. It was, oh, that's quite interesting, quite interesting. I had a few tools that were hooked into it that were using ChatGPT. So then I had tools over the top that were laying into it. But I think, I'm at that point in my life where I have a ChatGPT subscription. I'm thinking I probably need to cancel it because I don't really use it. I have it hooked into my iPhone, but I very rarely have conversations with Siri I very rarely talk to Siri because Siri's pretty rubbish in its own right, and therefore don't really have a need to hand over to ChatGPT. And I think pretty much all the tools and tools that I use, which leverage the large language models, which we'll come on to in a bit, most of them are actually using Claude as well. So yeah, I'm at that point where I'm almost thinking about pushing ChatGPT into the wilderness. I guess the only reason I keep it is probably because of what we do for a living, what we do here with Beside Partners, out of curiosity and actually able to test things as they come in.
I'll give special mention. Yeah, carry on. Sorry.
No, go on.
I'll give special mention to two use cases from the LLMs that I am using, because they are worth pointing out. One is image generation from Gemini. So the Banana Pro for me, still remains the best one in the market. It's not just the capabilities, the way that it interprets prompts as well. So I'm still using that a lot. And Claude as a reviewer. So I write a Substack, and I like to do my own writing. But having set it up, with my strategy and my audience and everything, I find that Claude is a really, really good editor. So I give it a draft, and it kind of comes back with some suggestions and some improvements. And having tried exactly the same Gemini project in Claude, the same thing in different LLMs, also in Copilot, the reviewer, Claude as a reviewer, is actually very, very good. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, I think with Claude, I mean, I've because I've been using Claude pretty exclusively, really, as my kind of LLM assistant. I've built out a whole series of projects in various areas of my life, giving it a lot of background, understanding of who I am, and that's really started. And it's like all these things; they compound. The more you give it, the more it learns. The more you work with it, the more it understands about you. It was interesting that I think it was last week, Claude sort of said, "Oh, I'm going to, look at everything we've been doing and basically come up with a kind of a synopsis of who you are, actually more." But and it came up with this whole, which is pretty damn accurate, because obviously everything I'm doing with it. But yeah, to you, I think my first real need for it was tied more to writing. So people may or may not know, but I'm really into photography. I have a photography Substack, which is quite successful. So I do some regular. Each week I have a newsletter I produce, and I used it as an editor, really, to help me. I mean, my lovely wife has always over the years been my proofreader.
Oh yeah, same here.
Yeah. Well, to save her a job, I thought, well, surely these things can do it. So my usual, my usual kind of workflow. So I still actually, one of the things I really enjoy with my photography, I'll start with one of those on a fountain pen. I will actually sit down and I will write it. I will my workflow is I sit there and think, right, what is it I'm going to, I'll decide on what the topic is. I may have used the LLM to sort of play with some back and forth on some topics, and then I'll sit down and I will brain dump it out through pen onto paper and think, well, this is what I'm going to do.
And I noticed that this proper ink pen over there. Like, I can imagine you. I think you should get a quill. I get a picture of you as a dandy over a desk.
Classic.
Now.
Yeah, exactly. I just sit there in the morning, cup of coffee, and I just write it out.
English gentleman, cup of tea, surely.
No, unfortunately, I'm a coffee guy. But I find that for me, that's quite good to get it out. But once I've done that, I will then read it, transcribe it, create a digital version of it, and then that's where I will then be going backwards and forwards. So I use it as an editor. So yes, I do can you proofread this and fix all the typos and the grammatical errors and all that sort of stuff. But I'll also be saying, okay, how can I cross-reference this to the previous articles I've written? I've been doing this now for 15, 16 months. So there's, 70 odd plus articles. And it's like, well, how can I link those in? And are there things I've said previously that I should be referencing that I've maybe forgotten about? And also even more recently, I've gone into sort of broader discussions about, in terms of the narrative, I'll ask it to challenge me about, well, actually you could have gone deeper on this point, or you've missed a bit of a trick here. And actually, with that process, I might then go, well, that's a fair point. Out comes the pen again. I write a whole new section, read it back in, drop it. So it's very much a collaborative process, but it's using it to kind of challenge me. Now, when I've tried other tools like ChatGPT and Gemini, I found them very, I say sort of functional. It just doesn't feel it gets as deep as I've found with Claude. I found Claude will get much deeper. It will actually it will really pull things out that I've just not even noticed. Whereas the others will be it's a bit more like, well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's fairly obvious. I should have fixed that. Whereas quite often I get these, oh yeah, sort of moments with Claude. I'm going, yeah, I don't really think about that. Oh, you're right. Or maybe I should. And so I just find it a really useful partner in that process. And then I've just extended that out into other things in terms of the way it's supporting me on that sort of stuff.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, so.
As an editor. I wonder though, what about the different models that are available with each one of the chatbots? So the medium, low power or fast mode and thinking mode. Do you use it a lot?
I did use, well, I always used to go, and again, this has changed over time, but I was always, I think if I go back, particularly, when I first started using like Claude 18 months ago, maybe longer, when I really went into it. In fact, it's more than 18 months ago, a lot longer than that. But it was always, we always want to be on the latest one because actually there were such incremental differences that were happening. I think now, yes, uh, you can throttle and change them. I think for personal use, I tend to just generally leave it on the best ones. And actually, I've noticed now, particularly in Claude, they tend to be adaptive. So you don't, whereas previously you would have to go, well, I use this one, which is the deep thinking one, and this one, this. The models will actually flex and adapt themselves around that. So I think because from a personal plan, you tend to be on a kind of, X per month and that, or X per annum, and that sort of covers you. I found that works well. I know if we flick to the other side of it, where it's being used with teams I'm working with more commercially and things like coding, then there's very much a cost element to them.
There is.
So then you have to start being very strategic about, right, okay, well, we want to use this model for this because it's a bit cheaper, whereas for this a more complex task. And actually then I think of it more as as a DJ, an old DJ at a mixing desk, or some of the sounds where you're moving your levers up and down, going, well, and it's interesting. I actually had a conversation with Anthropic last week at the AWS conference, because one of the things I'm challenging with one of the businesses we're working on is actually how do you get a handle on budgeting your costs for using in this instance Anthropic or Claude in a software development environment, because it's just
they burn through the tokens like
they
nothing,
burn
right?
through the tokens like nobody's business. And actually trying to get as a business leader, or as an executive, trying to budget and plan for that, it's very difficult, because you're like going, well, I just want to be able to understand what my cost is. Is it £1,000 a month, is it £200 a month, is it whatever? But I think that's the way of the world, so that we're all going into.
Well, costs, the conversation with costs, which we will cover at some point when we'll get a bit more data and everything. I think there's going to be something that in the SME world we're going to talk a lot, because SMEs, of course, as you just described, they need to control budgets, they need to control costs, but
Yes.
AI labs have got the exact opposite brief. So as they're positioning for IPOs, they also want to show that they can generate more and more revenue.
Yes.
So obviously the question of cost and tokens and which model you use and everything, which application you use, it's going to become much more of a hot topic as the next weeks and months go by.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's actually, as I say, for users, you kind of just tend to leave it and let it adapt it. But I think, it's going to, as that model choice is going to drive the cost. And actually, there's a whole environmental aspect to it as well, because obviously the more complex models are burning more power, more using more water, more cooling and stuff like that. So actually, I know I used to be at the very outset of going, oh yeah, I probably should hold back. Actually, it's almost the tools almost need to get a bit better at doing that, which is why I think the adaptive modes that they're building in, they're kind of almost meeting that there, where they're taking some of that pain away from you. Because it's enough when you're sort of thinking about, well, how am I going to engineer my prompts, about thinking, and then as a air quotes normal user, then having to think about, and what's the best model.
That's it. Yeah. Well, talking of tools, I mean, I think that we're moving towards a world now, or a situation now, where it's going to be less important to talk about which LLM, which model you're using, or even which version, which model of that you're using. It's more like which ecosystem you're operating in. So like you, I also have got a portfolio career, and a lot of my companies are actually on the Google platform. So there's a lot of Gemini work, and I wouldn't jump to another model because it is embedded within Google Workspace. Other companies are using the Microsoft ecosystem, and I stay within Copilot, or sometimes I embed external tools into it. And again, the benefit that I would get from using, for example, Claude, because more power, holistically preferable to me, etc., is not enough to justify the fact that actually Copilot is bedded into the product. So I think that a lot of the decision about which model you use will gradually start shifting away from capabilities and style, which is what originally was, oh, my model is better than yours, etc., and more towards cost and availability, usability, how much it is embedded into your products, etc. And I have to say that Anthropic is doing a pretty good job on this one, especially on the things that it is trying to get ahead in. For example, its integration in the for coders into the terminals, into
Yeah.
VS Code, into all these
Yeah.
things. It shows very good thinking about actually it's not just going to be the power of the model, but it's also going to be its availability. How easy is it for people to use this model, to incorporate it into their own workflows, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where that's where Google and Microsoft have a slight advantage, because obviously, let's put aside the fact that Microsoft's offering is suboptimal, but the fact that they're able to embed that directly into Office, Windows, Google Workspace, and stuff like
Yes.
that. It's the same. I guess it's the same analogy when you talk about mobile phones, and Apple and their software, is embedded on their phones, Google and Android, it's the same thing. It's that they're able to very tightly integrate those solutions together. And actually the ones that will succeed are those that are as easy to use as possible. So the ones where you don't actually almost have to make a choice. And therefore, Microsoft Office, is prevalent everywhere. Everybody, uses Microsoft Office. Even those people on Workspace are still installing PowerPoint because they like it. So therefore, you would expect those tools to come out. And as you said earlier, the Google Gemini stuff is really good. I'm like, I've got feet in both camps. And when I'm working in a Google Workspace environment, Gemini is great. And I think the big plus side of Gemini is that a lot of it's included in the cost, whereas Microsoft, sorry, it's kind of add-ons. You've got to really get the best out of Copilot. You've got to pay quite substantial additional licensing costs. I guess that's going to change over time. Then the flip side of that is that ChatGPT and Claude, they're kind of from the outside in. So they're, you've got Claude Cowork, which is obviously able to do things on your machine, but it's not directly integrated into your Office
ecosystem. It requires
ecosystem.
high levels of trust, and that's going to be that could be an issue for a lot of companies. The whole OpenClaw, full agent autonomy conversation. I think it has got, it is very interesting from a geeky perspective, but I can see that being a bit of an obstacle when it comes to business adoption. I can see a lot of CTOs just basically not wanting anywhere near software having this much control over people's desktops because you don't know what they're going to fire out. Now, we've been reassured Cowork runs into a VM and there's a whole lot of precautions and guardrails in place. And yet, it still is something that could, in theory, perform an operation that the user or the owner of that device has not authorized, at which point you run into the problem of, who's at fault here. Yeah, so
exactly.
I can see
and
that.
I think, and again, one of my many things I'm doing and I'm going through at the moment is obviously looking at things like information security. You're looking at, endpoint management is a big thing from an SME perspective or a business perspective in information security. So it's like, okay, so what devices have you got? What operating systems are they running? What versions of patch have you got? Now, all of a sudden, and who's got access to that machine in terms of usernames and passwords and accounts? Now, all of a sudden, you start thinking about, okay, what software, what LLMs have access to that machine? Because I might be logged in, but I might have Claude Cowork doing stuff on my machine, and that's, it's not me doing it. That's some software agent, potentially from some cloud-based LLM that's driving that. And actually, as you say, you can plug all sorts on there. So in the same way with like information security in the ISO 27001 standard, that's just flipped over to the latest version of it in 2022, which was integrating some cloud computing stuff. There's going to be another version that's going to have to come pretty quickly that's starting to integrate and actually what we need to think about around AI. So there's a minefield we need to get through there as technologists, business owners, even just, people working in businesses about how we do that in a secure way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
just conscious, is it worth just talking about I know we talked about the LLMs. Is it worth just talking about some of our go-to apps or tools or platforms that we use? So not necessarily ChatGPT and Claude, but are there any?
Some applications. Absolutely.
Particular applications you enjoy that have an AI slant at the moment?
So at the moment, I think that I'm in terms of it's on the company side of things. You've heard me talk a lot about News AI, which is a startup that we're working with. On the knowledge base sides, they are doing a fantastic job, and I'm using it quite a lot at the moment, both in terms of my own use. So we set it up on some of our own companies, and it's made the use case of generating content in a particular format and also enterprise sales of finding stuff in the chaos that inevitably becomes a SharePoint folder makes that a lot easier. So that is one of my favorite applications over there. And from a personal perspective, I think that ever since you introduced me to Granola for note taking, I think that has become, a go-to application for everything. It's a subtle change because obviously Google Meet and Teams will all record things, but being able to record strains from the mic input, so even phone calls, whatever it is, it's a subtle change, but it's a very important one. And it transcribes, it doesn't record, which kind of makes life a little bit easier. Kind of a smaller file to work with and be able to kind of converse with it as well. So, yeah, there is those who are pretty are the ones outside the mainstream kind of LLMs, if you like, in that world that I find useful at this stage. How
Yeah,
about you?
well, yeah, Granola, as you know, is a big fan of, and I think it's one we all get regularly asked which meeting transcriber are you using in it. Yeah, and I think it's coming back to what we said before about the whole Claude thing. It's a slightly different experience, but it just seems to work. It just seems, I think it's very capable of what it does, but it also it has that more LNM sort of chat sort of interface as well, isn't it? But I also find that again, you can ask it questions, you can pull stuff out, and it's very, very good. I'm really impressed by that one. So Granola. If anybody wants to go look that one up, just put granola.ai. I think you find it. Another one that I'll give a good shout that I've started using very recently, probably in the last month or so, and I am absolutely hooked on it. It's called Whisperflow.
Oh, yes.
And I am actually, I think I heard it mentioned on a podcast, but since then I think Stephen Bartlett's involved in it. Anyway, goes in there. I think I described you. I'm living the Star Trek life where I am doing so much stuff now where I'm actually just dictating what I want to do. So even when I'm engaging with like the LLMs, I'm using Whisperflow to actually capture what I'm saying. Basically dictating anything, dictating emails, WhatsApp responses, questions to LMMs. And what's really good is that it will take the gibberish that comes out of my mouth and it will actually correct it. So you can just think aloud. So you can have I could even say like, oh, can you go and do this? Oh, no, and I didn't mean that. Can you do this?
It's got that,
so you're sort of correcting yourself as you're talking and it's able to take that and actually work with it and go, and there is it. And I think that has
By the way, I love the workflow where you start with ink, you write on paper, then you read it onto the computer for it to kind of like to transcribe it. That's
exactly.
I think that's a great workflow. We're kind of going back to pen, paper, and recorder. Everybody, it's back to the 80s. That's it.
Well, that's it. I think there's part of the. To be honest, I think actually, while we mention that, is probably with the writing. It's almost trying to ground the writing is still being me. And actually, I feel that by actually doing it on pen and paper, it's like, well, there's no way anything can. I've still got to think and actually get it out. And actually, by writing, it does slow your mind down, which I find is really useful. Quite therapeutic as well, a way of doing it. And it's the way, at least I know that actually it's coming from me. And then I might use AI to help me embellish it and improve it and tweak it and refine it. But it's still me that's doing it. But yeah, Whisperflow is the one I check in there. And I guess the big question to finish with would be, do you think it's made you more productive? Has it improved your quality of working life and life generally?
Do you know, I would like to kind of start and get all sarcastic and but I can't. It is inconceivable the change that it has made to my working life. Being able to operate in different stacks, different environments, different companies, kind of running that portfolio career, so to speak, would have been at this stage, it would have been impossible without these tools. And I have also found that as we always advocate augmentation against automation, I have found that to be the case with some careful planning, some trying deliberately, not overdoing the use whenever I need to think. I found that to be the case, and I was looking at some of my own stats about what applications I spend more time, and I do spend a lot more time in things like notes, taking notes, writing notes, PowerPoint, which is my own kind of design thinking tool, if you like. For other people, it's hell. For me, it's a design thinking tool, and a lot less time in things like Word, Excel, and the rest of it is where the some of the legwork of the work comes in. So yeah, I think it definitely has. It would be, the world would be inconceivable. You wouldn't be able to kind of interface with this many people at this many levels without these assistants, right? So yes, it has definitely helped. How
Yeah,
about you? Please tell me you
yeah.
hate it. You hate
No,
it. You go back. You
no,
plug it.
sadly,
Come on,
I'm
let's plug it all
not.
off.
Yeah, no, I find I've, as I say, in all the places we've talked about, I've found it's, transformation. Even just as we're talking about the ability now, just to think out loud and actually get that translated into a meaningful, and then use that as an engagement, a way to describe, actually being able to describe what you want your computer to do rather than actually having to kind of type it, and even it's even sort of levels. And we haven't even touched on some of the tools that exist now in terms
Exactly.
of building code and software and all those sort of stuff, which again is incredible, that you can just, things that you would have originally sat at a terminal or whatever and typed in, and now you can just be you could just be conversing with the computer and using that. And actually it's just as consultants like we are, with portfolio careers, multiple clients, multiple projects, things like that, it makes it is really taken my productivity and just put it beyond the level where I thought it could be. So
yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, we have drunk the Kool-Aid and we are quite excited about it. But then we are doing an AI-based podcast. It would be a bit stupid.
Exactly. Yes. Only we are level-headed about it. I don't think that anybody can accuse this podcast of being too enthusiastic about it. We've always said that we are too experienced to be completely enthusiastic, right?
Yeah. There is that bit of is it too good? But I think it's
on balance.
It's being balanced.
Benefit.
Balance. That's exactly so. Well,
Awesome.
I didn't actually check what time we start, but I think we've probably gone for our normal sort of 20-odd minutes or so. So, which I think is where we try to keep these things. But
exactly.
I mean, as always, I think that's just a quick run through of where we're coming from, I think. And I don't know, have you got any final thoughts before we wrap up?
In terms of the LLM use and everything, to summarize my thinking, I think the conversation is going to shift away from the model themselves. It's going to move into the applications, the cost, how embedded they are in your workflow. Because I think that now from one model to the other, the differences are getting pretty marginal. So I think that we're going to be talking a lot less about the science, and I think we're going to be talking a lot more about alliances and how these AI is embedded into applications.
Yeah,
and you?
I completely agree. I think it's going to be more about looking at the use cases of actually where it can really double down on improving people's lives, making them more productive. As you say, whether it's Gemini, whether it's Claude, whether it's ChatGPT, they have the capability to drive the things. I think it's then the use cases or tools we layer on top. I think they're to me the things that are really transforming the way that I'm working, and I think we're going to see a lot more emphasis in those areas and some quite exciting things coming out, hopefully. So
fantastic.
But as always, if we're always open we'd love to hear from others about what what tools they're enjoying. Wherever we are, there's going to be opportunity to put comments, or send us some feedback, or if you think there's a particular tool that you think we've missed or a trick we're missing that maybe we should be looking at, always looking to find out more. As I said, the whole whisper flow thing I found by listening to some other podcast. I can't remember what it is now. So please do share them, LinkedIn, through the comments, whatever. We'd
love to hear from you.
All the links will be below. And thanks, Theo, for joining me or joining.
Thank you.
Let's get a great fun
conversation. Yeah.
And we'll see everybody in a week or so.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Beside Ourselves. Don't forget to send us your questions via the comments or the email address in the description.